Okay, so Lindy, before we start talking about some of those core beliefs that kind of you have about yourself, I want to start with a mindfulness exercise. This is just something to help ground you and help make sure we're in a calm frame of mind, and that way we can talk about things that may be difficult coming from the calmest place possible.
Okay.
Does that sound okay?
Yep, that sounds
Okay.
good.
So this technique is called square breathing. So what that means is as you're breathing, you think of it as a square. So what we'll do is you breathe in for 4 seconds and you hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds. And we'll try doing that 3 times, and I'll do the counting so you can just focus on your breath and just really trying to clear your mind, really focus on your breath and the in and out. And that way we can kind of just bring you back to the present, make sure we're focused and ready for the session. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so I'll start counting. So remember, it's in, hold, out, hold, just like a square.
Okay.
Okay, ready? So here we go. In, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. In, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out, 1, 2, 3, 4. This time you count. In, hold, out, out. Okay. How did you feel when you were doing that?
I definitely feel just more kind of relaxed. I don't want to say at peace because I'm not really at peace, but just kind of
Mhm.
relaxed in the moment.
Sure. And when you don't have somebody counting, when you're doing this on your own, this is a technique you can use when you're starting to feel anxious or starting to feel overwhelmed. It's something you can do just within yourself, and that way you can kind of set the pace and how fast you count or how slow you count. You can increase the numbers or decrease them if you feel like it's too much. It's really for you. So if it's something that you find helpful, really make it feel like it's your own.
Yeah, and I like it too because I can do it and no, like as long as I'm not moving my head up and down, nobody could see that I can do was doing it in public.
Absolutely. It's something that you can do anywhere at any time. Some mindfulness techniques require props or things that you have to do,
Mhm.
and this is one that you can do whenever you need it and just kind of within yourself and just really help you kind of recenter and refocus on the present. So hopefully now that we're centered and focused, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about those kind of core beliefs that you have about yourself. We've talked in the past about how some of the things that you really think about yourself are that that you're not a good person and that people don't like you and they don't want to be around you.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and I just kind of just feeling my self-esteem in general is just down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And those are really difficult things to think about yourself. And um, you've told me in the past that they kind of lead to really struggling to put yourself out there and to be around people. How would you say in the last like week or so, kind of how many times have you thought that way about yourself?
In the last week, I would say at least 7 or 8 times. So at
Okay.
least once a day.
Yeah, and that's a lot. That
Hmm.
sounds really difficult to be thinking things like that about yourself so often. So our goal with this exercise is to really analyze it and really see where those thoughts are coming from and how they're affecting your behavior, and then how can we turn those to be more positive and sort of more reality based. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Hmm.
Okay. So can you tell me about an event that happened recently that kind of triggered these thoughts for you?
Well, I mean, here recently I've just kind of been feeling like really hopeless and stuff, but then also um, I lost my job because I was sleeping a lot and I never would get out of bed, but that's kind of part of too because my boyfriend broke up with me and I just kind of had a lot going on and I feel like there's a lot expected of me, but when I'm going through all this stuff, I mean, it's hard for me to even want to get out of bed or want to go to work.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds really, really difficult. And it's really hard when you feel like you have a lot of expectations that you can't fulfill. It sort of becomes this cycle. So,
Right.
what of those two things that have kind of been really hard that happened recently with your boyfriend or with your job, which one would you like to focus on today?
Um, Probably my job because I think my boyfriend, it is what it is. If he doesn't want to be with me, he doesn't want to be with me. So my job is
Okay,
important to make a living.
sure. Yeah. And that's a really difficult thing to have happen. So, if we think about the event being that you lost your job, what sort of thoughts did that trigger about yourself that kind of relate to that kind of core belief that we talked about earlier?
Well, it just made me feel dumb. I mean, for thinking that I can't go to work because a guy let me get so down, and then
Hmm.
me feel like if I can't pay my bills, well, then I'm pretty much worthless. I mean, what are you supposed to do all day if you don't work? And how am I ever going to pay for stuff? And what's my family going to think of me? And it triggered up a lot of thoughts of kind of going back to the hopelessness and that I can't really move forward.
Sure. So it sounds like it triggered a lot of those feelings of feeling worthless and like you can't do anything right,
Mhm.
and kind of that core belief about yourself, that hopeless, worthless kind of schema is what it's called.
Right, exactly.
Okay. So when those thoughts come into your head, how are you feeling? What kind of emotions are you feeling?
It mainly sad.
Hmm.
Sometimes kind of angry at, not at other people, just angry at myself.
Okay. So a lot of sad feelings, a lot of kind of anger, a lot of feelings directed towards yourself,
Right.
it sounds like.
Yeah, it's not
Okay.
necessarily other people, it's just me.
Hmm. Yeah. That sounds hard. And those are really difficult thoughts to have about ourselves.
Yeah.
When you're having these thoughts, or these feelings, sorry, when you're having these feelings, what are you thinking? What's going through your mind?
Well, it kind of just makes me think, why do I need to even be here? If I can't keep down a job, I can't have somebody who loves me, you know, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So when you have these thoughts about why be here, what do you do?
Well, I don't I don't ever really have like a plan to do anything, but I mean, sometimes I do have suicidal thoughts.
Okay. So some of those thoughts are suicidal. What
Hmm.
actions do you take when you're thinking like this? When you're feeling really sad and angry at yourself, believing that you're worthless, and you're thinking about why be here, maybe I should do something. What do you do? What actions do you take?
Well, a lot of the times I just stay in bed, which is part of my problem. Uh,
Mhm.
because I then it kind of leads to all these other factors, and I know that, but it's just hard because
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything. But I mean, sometimes like I've thought about cutting or something like that, but then I've I haven't acted on it.
Okay. So when you're having these thoughts about why be here, part of the way that you cope with that is just by staying in bed, it sounds like.
Yeah, and sometimes I can call my sisters and stuff, but you don't
Mhm.
want to bother people with your problems.
Sure. You feel like you kind of should handle them on your own.
Yeah.
Okay. When you're having all these really difficult thoughts and feelings and feeling like you need to stay in bed and just kind of handle things and stay to yourself, how is your body feeling? What are you feeling like physically within your body?
Weak. Just
Weak?
very weak. Sometimes I get a really bad headache. Um, Sometimes like my muscles will tense up here in my shoulders. And I feel like I'm walking around like this all day and I keep
Hmm.
my shoulders down. Um, but really I just feel exhausted.
Yeah, which I imagine then makes it hard to get out of bed.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, it kind of perpetuates and it sort of becomes this cycle, right? So
right.
you have all these terrible thoughts about yourself, really sad, worthless, angry feelings. Um, which kind of make you think about why should you be here. So then you stay in bed, sometimes think about self-harming, which makes your body feel weak and exhausted, which makes it
Mhm.
hard to get out of bed, which leads to these other thoughts, right? So it becomes this big cycle.
Mhm.
So what's one thing that maybe you could tell yourself instead of I'm worthless? What's one other thing that you could try when that thought pops into your head? What could you try to replace that with or remind yourself of?
I could try to replace it with mm, I have people who love me.
Yeah, you do. I like that. I have people who love me. And people who see the good parts of you that you're struggling to see for yourself, right?
Right.
I think your sisters probably see a lot of good in you, and even if you can't see it yourself, they see it in you. And maybe reminding yourself of that other people see good in you, even if you can't see it in yourself right now, in those moments can help. How do you think that would change those emotions if you told yourself, I have people who love me?
I think it would kind of help in that moment just to make me feel a little bit at ease knowing that even when I do feel down, that there's somebody here that still cares about me.
Sure.
And it makes me, I don't want to say it makes me completely happy, but it does bring me joy, I guess.
Yeah, remembering that people love us and care about us is a really important thing. And I wonder if you told yourself that instead of I'm worthless, how that would affect those kind of suicidal thoughts,
Hmm.
which maybe would affect the way that you act and the things that you're able to do.
Yeah, I think if I replaced worthlessness with like, um, I don't know, maybe I'm useful,
Yeah,
or maybe
I like that.
because I'm like at work, I know that I'm good at my job
Mhm.
and kind of help knowing that when I am at work, I do what I'm supposed to and I do know what I'm doing. So, versus just being in bed, at least I know like when I go to work, I do a good job.
Yeah, that sounds great. And reminding yourself of that may help it make it easier to get out of bed too,
Yeah,
because you know you're getting up for a reason.
right, right.
Well, let's try that for the next week, and then next week when we meet, we can talk about how that went and how that changed your thoughts and feelings when you try to replace with those two phrases that I have people who love me and I'm useful.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. Now, before you go, um, I really want to check in with you and how you're feeling with your suicidal thoughts and feelings. Part of my job is to make sure that you're safe. And I told you before that at the end of every session, before we go, we're going to just check in with that. And you also said that sometimes when you're having these sad and angry thoughts, you are feeling suicidal and kind of thinking those suicidal thoughts. And thinking about self-harming. So I really like to check in with where you're at with that and and if we need to make a plan for the next week to help keep you safe.
I don't think we need a plan. I know that I could contact the offices if I needed or go to the ER if I had to, or, um, I have my sisters who I can call, so I know I have people there. I think sometimes the thought crosses your mind of, well, what if I did this? But it's just a what if. I've never had a plan or never
Okay.
really got a knife or anything like that. So
Okay. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how intense would you say those suicidal thoughts are?
I would say like a two.
Okay. For how long have they been on a 2?
Um, just since I think we started. Before we started, I would say they're at a four.
Okay. Um, when they're at a 2, are you thinking about any plans or anything like that?
No, it's just like if I were if I were to cut, like how would I do it? Those kind of things come to my mind,
Okay.
but not like thoughts of actually dying, just maybe thoughts of harming. But
Okay.
I've never, like I said, I've never acted on it or anything. I just
Okay.
sometimes the thoughts cross your mind.
Okay. So more thoughts with no intent, it sounds like.
Right.
Okay. And what would push those thoughts higher on that scale of 1 to 10?
Um, honestly probably if like I can't ever find another job, or something happened to my siblings, or my boyfriend came back and told me that he really never loved me or something like that, then I'd like.
Okay. Sure. So some big things, but overall you feel like they'll stay pretty stable.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said you have a plan for if something does happen and they get pushed higher. You mentioned calling the crisis line, going to the ER, and getting support from your sisters.
Right.
Okay. Well, that sounds great. Let's we'll just keep assessing that and just keep making sure we know where you're at with that and making those plans. And next week we'll talk about how those kind of replacement phrases went.
Okay, that sounds great.
Okay. Great.